Peace and Pan-Africanism, peace and Pan-Africanism. Good Garvey Day to you all. Peace and Pan-Africanism, peace and Pan-Africanism. Good Garvey Day to you all. As you all know, during the past 3 censuses, the 2000 census, the 2010 census, and the 2020 census, we have seen a dwindling of the numbers of American Africans in this country on paper. We have seen the amount of American Africans in this country constantly shrink on paper. This was a strategy of the power structure to reduce the number of black people that live in this country on paper by creating alternative racial categories and identities. So they allowed self-hating blacks to call themselves Hispanic if they spoke Spanish. They allowed self-hating blacks to call themselves biracial. They allowed self-hating blacks to call themselves multiracial. They allowed self-hating blacks to check the box that says other. By adding those 4 categories, of biracial, multiracial, Hispanic, and other, and of course Hispanic goes back to 1970s, they were able to effectively reduce the amount of American Africans on paper. There were more of us in society, but on paper they needed to look like there were less black people than what actually existed, so they could deny any responsibility to address our concerns by claiming our numbers are not as large in certain states, certain cities, certain areas, and in America as a whole. They played the race game on us the past 3 census takings. The past 3 census, 2000, 2010, 2020, you have witnessed the disappearing of Black America. You have witnessed the disappearing of Black America. You have witnessed the disappearing of Black America through the Hispanic, biracial, multiracial, and other categories. I am now saying they're going to do the same thing with gender. They are going to do the same thing with gender. I'm hoping the LGBTQI plus brothers and sisters don't fall for the okie doke. They've already used self-hating Africans against us. Now they're going to use American African LGBTQ plus IA identifying folks against us. Let me explain to you how. Let me explain to you how. It was just announced today that the United States Department of State, the U.S. Department of State, has issued the first passport that has X as a gender option instead of male or female. So now you can get a passport and not be considered a man or a woman. You can simply check the X box. Stay with me for a minute. Don't get emotional, just hear the logic. I'm not here to debate your lifestyle. You already know my position on that. I've discussed it for 20 years. I don't need to play a broken record. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here now to ask you whether or not you're going to allow your sexual orientation to be used as a weapon against your race. That's the only question. You can do whatever you want in your personal life, but publicly and politically, when it comes time to fill out the paperwork, when it comes time to fill out the census, when it comes time on paper to represent who you are you going to disidentify from the gender and race that you were assigned at birth? So stay with me for a minute. Stay with me for a minute. You no longer have to say you are a man or a woman. We understand. You can say you are, what do they call it? Asexual and intersexual, trans woman, trans man. There's like 64 different genders now. There's about 64 different genders now. There's about 64 different genders. Now pay attention to how they're going to erase American Africans on paper. If a if a non-sexual, I'm just going to say non-sexual, if a non-sexual American African fills out paperwork saying I am not a man, which means you're saying I am not a black man. Stay with me. I want you to understand, overstand, and understand me. I want you to understand, overstand, and understand me. If a black trans woman, which means he was biologically a man, or asexual, or bisexual, anything other than black man or black woman, if you say that I do not identify as a black man, stay with me. You don't identify as black and you don't identify as a man. Let's say if a non-sexual black woman says, I don't identify as black and I don't identify as a woman. Do you know what you just did? Stay with me now. It's not just gender, it's gender and race. So we're dealing with Africans who don't want to be black, and we're dealing with Africans who don't want to be their God-given assigned gender at birth. It is both. It's not one or the other. They're equally harmful. The point that I'm making is when they intersect. The point that I'm making is when they intersect, they basically will become invisible for purposes of being counted as a black man or a black woman. They will basically become invisible as a black man or a black woman. Stay with me now. It is race times gender. Race times gender. Why are you bringing this up, Dr. Umar? Because we already know they're trying to get rid of us physically. But what's going to help them get rid of us physically, if they can get rid of us politically on paper. In other words, there's 50 million American Africans in America. There's 50 million American Africans in America. There's 50 million American Africans in America. If they can get us to commit suicide on paper, if they can convince us to become invisible on paper, let's say they get 10 million of the 50 million American Africans. Let's say they get 10 million of the 50 million American Africans to disidentify from being black and disidentify from being a man or a woman. We are down to 40 million overnight. Do you understand, overstand, and understand me? Do you understand, overstand, and understand me? I'm going to say it again. There's 50 million of us right now. Let's say they can get 5 million, 10 million, 20 million American Africans to disidentify from being black and also disidentify from being a man or a woman. We have disappeared overnight. 10 million American Africans have disappeared overnight by virtue of claiming to not be black and to also claim to not be a man or a woman. We are talking about a political genocide that will happen before the physical genocide. And once they commit the political genocide, once they can get 10 million American Africans to disappear on paper, once they kill us in the real world, they don't even have to be accountable for it because we already disappeared on paper. Let me say it again. Let me say it again. If they can get 2 million, 5 million, 7 million, 10 million, 15, 20 million American Africans to disidentify from being black and disidentify from being a man or a woman on paper, we commit political genocide overnight. We become invisible. That is how you get rid of black people before you get rid of black people. That is how you get rid of black people without getting rid of black people. So what I'm saying to the LGBTQ plus IA community, it would be in the best interest of our race is if you continue on paper, if you continue to identify as a black man or a black woman, even if in your life and in your public life and in your social life, you consider yourself to be asexual or bisexual or no sexual or intersexual, that's fine. But live your life how you want to live your life, because for every American African who disidentifies from race and gender, for every American African who disidentifies from race and gender, you just committed suicide on paper. You just committed suicide on paper. This is why they're conditioning our children. This is why they're conditioning our children. This is why they're conditioning our children, because the way they see it, if we can get 10 million black boys or girls, if we can get 5 million black boys or girls, if we can get 2 million black boys and girls to say, I'm not black and I'm not a boy or a girl, then they can automatically render them as an imaginary African. Now, this goes both ways. This also speaks to the self-hating Africans. Those of you who like to say you mixed race, those of you who like to say you quarter African, those of you who like to say you're multiracial and biracial and Hispanic and all this other stuff, okay? Shout out to my Latino Africans. But the word Hispanic is a U.S. government invention. The word Hispanic is a U.S. government invention. So when you click the Hispanic box, when you click the multiracial box, when you click the biracial box, you have just committed political suicide. You have just became invisible. You have just became non-existent as an African. So you take a number away from our team and you give it to another team. We can afford to lose our numbers, because for every number they can make disappear on paper, one of us will disappear in public. For every number that they make disappear on paper, one of us will disappear on public. Now you see how easy it is to kidnap 64,000 black women. Now you see how easy it is to kidnap 64,000 black women. Now you see how easy it is to mass genocide tens of thousands of inner city black males. Now you see how easy it is for the police to kill us off. Now you see how easy it is to lock us up and kill us in prison. Now you see how easy it is to kidnap us for organ trafficking. You see how easy it is to kidnap us for organ trafficking. What I'm saying is, as the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey said, what I'm saying is, as the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey said, put your race first. Don't put your gender first. Don't put your little bit of European blood first. Don't put your so-called mixed race ancestry first. Put being black first. Put being African first. If we don't, we are going to be rendered invisible before we become invisible. If we don't put our race first, we are going to become non-existent before we become non-existent. The weapon is to get you to not identify as a black man or an African. The weapon is to get you to not identify as a black man or an African or a black woman or an African. And after they get you to do that, they then want you to disidentify from being a man or a woman. Because for every American African, I'm talking to my immigrant Africans, I'm talking to Africans in Europe, they're going to do the same thing in the UK. They're going to do the same thing in France. They're going to do the same thing in the Caribbean, South America, on the continent of Africa, to reduce our numbers as a race. They want you to commit political genocide on paper. They want you to commit political genocide on paper. They want you to commit political genocide on paper by disidentifying from being black or African, and to also disidentify from being a man or a woman. For every one of us in the world who rejects our race and rejects our God-given assigned gender at birth, we have just helped the white power structure. For every one of us who does that, we have just helped the white power structure turn us into an invisible people. You ever heard of the book by Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man? You ever heard about the book by Ralph Ellison, one of our great African authors, Invisible Man? He talks about being invisible, being there but not really being there, being treated as if you don't exist. Well, they're taking it to a whole new level. 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 How do you get rid of black people? Politically on paper, before the physical carnage. Get them to disidentify from their race and get them to disidentify from their gender, and they don't exist no more as a black person. The black woman can cease to exist on paper if this doesn't stop. The black man can cease to exist on paper if this doesn't stop. In other words, they are committing ethnic cleansing on paper before they commit the physical genocide. They are committing ethnic cleansing on paper before they commit physical genocide. All I'm saying is we gotta stop disidentifying from being black. Ain't no such thing as mixed race. Ain't no such thing as multi-race. Did they call you multiracial when the slave master raped your grandma and gave birth to your great-great-great-grandma? Did they call you multiracial when the slave master raped your great-great-great-great-grandmother and gave birth to your great-great-great-grandma? Did they call you biracial? Was Frederick Douglass ever called biracial because his mother was raped by the slave master of my family? Was Frederick Douglass ever called biracial? Was my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Stephen Henry Bailey, Civil War veteran, ever called biracial because his mother was raped by the slave master? They made this stuff up in recent times to manipulate, confuse you, and to reduce our numbers on paper. Political ethnic cleansing, political suicide, political genocide. We got to wake up. They hurt us by becoming invisible. They hurt us. Self-hating black men and women have to stop calling themselves Hispanics, biracials, multiracials, and others. You are hurting us. By disidentifying from race and gender, you are hurting us. Do you realize you can wake up one day and they'll say there's no African Americans left in America? Do you realize you can wake up one day and still be here? All 50 million of us can still be here, and they will say we no longer have African Americans. We have binary multiracials, and we have bisexual biracials, and we have intersexual multiracials, but we no longer have African Americans. We no longer have. That can happen while we imagine that. You still got 50 million American Africans in America, but on paper, we have none because we have all disidentified from our race and we have all disidentified from our gender. Please understand, overstand, and understand. Please understand, overstand, and understand. Please understand, overstand, and understand. Chattanooga, I will see you 1 week from tomorrow. Today is Wednesday. Chattanooga, I will see you Thursday, November 4th. Atlanta, Friday, November 5th. Possibly Columbus, Georgia, Saturday, November the 6th. Or Columbia, South Carolina, Saturday, November the 6th. Dr. Baruch, Everlasting Life Cafe, Wednesday, November the 10th. elifepresents.com. elifepresents.com. Nat Turner Land, Virginia, 190th Memorial of the greatest African revolutionary on American soil. Go to natturnerlibrary.com to register. Go to natturnerlibrary.com to register. Go to natturnerlibrary.com to register. Norfolk, Virginia, Kroc Center, Friday, November the 12th. Norfolk, Virginia, Kroc Center, Friday, November the 12th. Great Blacks and Wax Museum, Sunday, November the 14th, 2 until 8, free event. Great Blacks and Wax Museum, Baltimore, Maryland, Frederick Douglass City, Harriet Tubman City. Come through. Sunday, November the 14th. South Florida, Margate, December the 4th. Minneapolis, Minnesota, December the 15th. Scottsdale, Arizona, the 17th. Hit the Cash App, $ FDMG School. Hit the Cash App, $ FDMG School. Hit the PayPal, paypal.me/FDMG Academy. Hit the PayPal, paypal.me/FDMG Academy. We have to wake up. There is an all-out war for African people. The global African depopulation agenda, the global African depopulation agenda is real. The global African depopulation agenda is real. If you need to reach me, 215-989-9858, 215-989-9858. The HVAC is en route to FDMG. The HVAC is en route to FDMG. The HVAC is en route to FDMG. Shout out to my donors. Shout out to my donors in Europe, the FDMG donors in Africa, FDMG donors in Canada, FDMG donors throughout the Caribbean, FDMG donors from Australia, the South Pacific, FDMG donors from Central and South America. Thank you all. I hope you all can make it to the second annual FDMG festival. I want to see my European African donors and my continental African donors and my Central and South American African donors. I want to see my Canadian and Australian African donors, my European and Asian African donors, my Caribbean African donors on Saturday, September the 10th. On Saturday, September the 10th for the festival in the nighttime, black tie style, first annual Unapologetically African Awards. First annual Unapologetically African Awards celebrating black excellence all over the world. This is the Prince of Pan-Africanism, intellectual Ifatunde, King Kong Consciousness, signing off. Chattanooga, Atlanta, Columbia or Columbus, Columbia, South Carolina or Columbus, Georgia, Columbia, South Carolina or Columbus, Georgia on Saturday, November the 7th. Everlasting Life Cafe, Capitol Heights, Maryland on the 10th. Nat Turner Land, 1111, natturnerlibrary.com. Norfolk, Virginia, Kroc Center, Friday, November the 12th. Great Blacks and Wax Museum, Sunday the 14th. This is King Kong Consciousness. One love.